Good day, dental professionals. Welcome to the Dental Flow podcast. We are dentistry's go-to resource for insights into the business side of dentistry. Your host, Benjamin Suggs, will be helping you navigate through the currents of the ever-changing dental waters. This podcast is packed with innovative practice growth strategies, actionable insights, and expert advice, all tailored to help you elevate your dental practice to the next level. If you're ready to dive in, so are we. Let's get into the flow.
Hello and welcome. Today we're going to be talking about something very important, that's something that every dental practice and honestly every business in the world has to figure out at some point, and that is the power of your business's or practice's name. We're going to talk about how to choose one that makes you stand out in your marketplace and some of the pitfalls that can happen when choosing a practice name that might cause you problems down the road. So for starters, I just want to point out that, if you're listening to this and you're saying, well, I already own a practice, so I don't really need to talk about this or listen to this, so I'm going to click off. This actually comes up quite a bit with existing practices. It's not just startups that have to think about this in the life cycle of a dental practice. And I'll give you some examples right now. As of right now, we have two clients that are very established, successful practices that are in the process of rebranding and renaming their practice. The two examples are one is a dentist who named their practice their own name. So let's just use my name as an example. The name of the practice is Benjamin Suggs DDS, and that's been the name of the practice for 20 years. But now that dentist is bringing in an associate and an orthodontist into the practice to work with him. So in that case, we are going through the process now of renaming the practice. The reason for that, though, is that because if I go to the website and I look at the website and it says Benjamin Suggs DDS, and I make an appointment at Benjamin Suggs DDS, I'm probably going to be expecting Benjamin Suggs DDS to walk into the operatory when I sit down in it. So we know that that's a concern. So that's why we're taking that business name and we're renaming it to something more broad and general that, means that, you have more than just one dentist in the practice. The second example is we have a client who is also very established, very successful, and they've had a practice for years, but they just bought a new practice, which is about 20 miles away from their first practice. So one of the things they want to do is instead of having two different practices with two different names, they want to rebrand them under one umbrella. So we're coming up with a name for what will be the two practices and ultimately most likely adding a third and a fourth down the road so that they'll all be under one branding umbrella. So I just bring that up. So if you're listening to this, keep in mind that practice naming is something that you may have to address at some point in your practice life cycle, even if you're already established. So let's get into it. So first and foremost, obviously, it's very important to pick a practice name that is above all else going to be memorable. If people can't remember it, then all the other type of advertising you do outside of digital becomes less effective. And I mean, if you're running billboards or even just, the sign, the monument sign you have out there in front of your practice or the sign above your front door, if that's lit up at night and people are driving by it all the time, you want that name to be something memorable that sticks out so that people will remember it. Because as you know, dentistry is not a service that people need every day. We know that, in fact, some people don't go to the dentist more than every couple of years. We try to get most people to come and see us every 6 months. Some people more often than that with perio issues. But we want something that people can see it multiple times on a billboard or a sign or, wherever. And when they do need that dental service, whether they wake up with teeth pain that morning or they want an implant or they just would need a checkup and a cleaning, they're going to remember your practice because your name stood out to them in some way. So you want to pick up something that's memorable, also, though, very professional. So, there was a kind of a trend, I'd say, about 8 or 10 years ago where everybody was naming their practice something, something smile. So illuminating smiles, beautiful smiles, perfect smiles, radiant smiles, and everybody was going down that one path. And the problem is that it's hard to remember which is which. People, it wasn't really standing out for people because they could drive down the street and they would see perfect smiles, beautiful smiles, radiant smiles, amazing smiles. So you want to pick out something that's memorable but also professional, and that will differentiate you as well. So a couple of things to think about as you craft the name is think about the type of patients you're trying to bring in. So as an example, years ago, we worked with a dentist who the problem with his practice was he hired us because his hygiene had really dried up completely. He wasn't getting any new hygiene patients. He was just getting stuff. But the name of his practice was something like dentocranial facial aesthetics. So the challenge there is that we pointed out is that if I'm looking for a teeth cleaning, I'm probably not going to go to dental cranial aesthetics solutions or whatever it was. I'm probably going to go to some place that I think would probably be offering a cleaning or an exam. So there's other options. There's practices out there named Implant and Sedation Center. I'm not going to go there for a cleaning. I would go there for a sedation or an implant. So keep in mind that you need to name your practice based on the type of patient you're trying to bring in. If you're trying to bring them all in, be inclusive with the name. If you're trying to bring in a very specific type, then fine, name it specifically Implant Sedation Center, Cosmetic Dental Center, whatever you want to call it, if that's the specific type of patient you want to bring in. But remember that some people will look at your name, and if they don't feel like it is exactly what they need, they will move on to the next dentist because the name itself doesn't lend to the service that they're looking for. So think about that as you come up with your name. Obviously, the number one thing you need to do as you come up with the practice name is go and make sure that the URL is available for that. So there's a lot of different, it used to be just .net, .com, .org. There's a lot more options out there now. There's even like a .dental, .dentist. But you really want to try and get a .com. We have clients that succeed with .net or .org, but .com is still where you want to be. So if you can, as you're coming up with names, go to a website like GoDaddy and just search for options for URLs to make sure that you have a URL available for the name that you want to choose. It's one of the most important things. And we've had clients that are startups that come to us and say, hey, I want to name it this. And then we just cannot find a suitable URL to match up with that name. So we kind of have to go back to the drawing board and say, hey, let's come up with something new. So that's very important, the URL. One of the things we see a lot of dentists like to name their practice with the name of their town in the title. So let's use Tupelo, Mississippi as an example. I don't know why. I don't have a client in Tupelo. So if you're listening to this and you're in Tupelo, reach out to us. But let's say, you want to name your practice Dentistry in Tupelo. So a few years ago, there would be a lot of value in that, especially if you could get a URL that was dentistryintupelo.com, because Google at that time would say, oh, well, here's somebody searching for a dentist in Tupelo, and look at this domain. It literally says Dentistry in Tupelo. So let's show that person at the top of the list. The reality is now it's not as valuable to have the name in the name of your town in the URL, because Google has become much more sophisticated to the point where they don't rely on that simple type of thing as much. So you will see on a map, if you go into Tupelo, another example, again, I don't know if this is true, and you type in dentist, you may see, Amazing Smiles is number one and Dentistry in Tupelo is number two on the list, because Google just knows that first practice is in Tupelo by their address, by their locality. So they're going to go ahead and rank them high, even though the name Tupelo is not in the URL. Now, another thing that's very important to remember is that we've seen this happen as well. Having the name in your URL and your practice of your town can confuse the search engines as well. And let's give an example. Let's say in Tupelo, your practice is named dentistryoftupelo.com. And there's also a Tupelo Family Dentistry, Tupelo Dental Care, Tupelo, whatever. there's 5 other ones that have the name in there. So we've seen what happens is Google sometimes get confused. So if somebody rides by your practice and they see the sign, they say, well, that place looks convenient, so let me go to Google and type in dentistry of Tupelo. You may not be the only result that pops up on the map. So we're seeing that Google will sometimes put multiple practices on the map because it's not quite sure which one you're looking for when you type that in. Now, over time, we've seen that correct itself after months and months, where finally Google figures out, like, okay, if someone's typing in dentistry of Tupelo is the practice they're looking for. We could figure that out. But that takes time for them to figure out, and sometimes they never do. So you have cases where, even though you're out there pushing your brand name and people are talking about you and sharing it with friends, when people are searching for it, they're finding multiple options, not just yours. So something to keep in mind. Do a quick search of your town and see how many dentists pop up with the name in their URL or in their practice name, and see if that might be an issue for you. So that's all I have today. Hopefully this is helpful for you as you go down the process of naming or renaming your practice. Hopefully this was some helpful tips. If you need more help, this is something we do help our clients with, so feel free to reach out, and have a good one.
Thank you for joining us for this Dental Flow podcast episode. If you enjoyed today's discussion and wish to stay updated on future episodes, please like, subscribe, and share the podcast with colleagues and friends. For more insights and discussions on dental marketing, we encourage you to continue riding the Dental Flow wave and tune into the next episode. Keep on smiling, learning, and flowing with the Dental Flow podcast.